Well, that didn't take very long, did it? It's been less than a year since George Floyd's death triggered protests and riots all across the nation. Many on the left have called for defunding the police. And in Minneapolis, where the incident took place, they cut the police department's budget by around $7 million. But it looks like they've had a change of heart. According to ABC News, quote, Minneapolis is planning to spend $6.4 million to hire dozens of police officers at a time when some city council members and activist groups have been advocating to replace the police department following George Floyd's death. The city council voted unanimously Friday to approve the additional funding that police requested. The department says it only has 638 officers available to work, roughly 200 fewer than usual. An unprecedented number of officers quit or went on extended medical leave after Floyd's death and the unrest that followed, which included the burning of a police precinct. End quote. That's strange, because I thought that the protests were mostly peaceful. According to a study done by the Major Cities Chiefs Association, that's the association of police chiefs and sheriffs representing the largest cities in the United States and Canada, from May 25th to July 31st, there were 574 riots. And get this, 72% of major city law enforcement agencies had officers injured, with one jurisdiction reporting that over 450 of their officers were injured in the riots. In total, more than 2,000 troopers were hurt by violence perpetrated in what they describe as mostly peaceful protests. Democrats, the media, and the Major Cities Chiefs Association all say that only 7% of the protests last year turned violent. That's why they can describe them as mostly peaceful. By that standard, what happened on January 6th was mostly peaceful. But for some reason, you won't hear anyone describe it that way. In less than 2 months after the Minneapolis City Council voted to cut funding to the police department, they've now decided to refund the police. Why? Let's go back to that ABC article for the answer. Quote, while there have been calls to dismantle the department after Floyd's death, some residents have begged the city to hire more officers, citing longer response times and an increase in violent crime. End quote. Now, who do you think are having to wait longer for the police to show up? And who do you think are suffering from an increase in violent crime? Of course, it's the people who live in the worst neighborhoods in Minneapolis. A quick DuckDuckGo search found that Hawthorne has the highest crime rate in Minneapolis. It's a majority-minority community with blacks making up 44% of the population. These are the people who want more police officers on patrol, because they are the people that are suffering from this insane idea that the police are causing most of the violence that happens to blacks in bad neighborhoods. This makes me think of what Tupac said in an interview back in the day before he was gunned down in a drive-by. He was talking about why he carries a gun, and he makes a brilliant case for the Second Amendment and for why they need the police just like white people do.
And the main thing for us to remember is that the same crime element that white people are scared of, black people are scared of. The same crime element that white people fear, we fear. So we defend ourselves from the same crime element that they scared of. You know what I'm saying? While they waiting for legislation to pass and everything, we next door to the killer. We next door to him, you know, because we up in the projects where it's 80 in the building. All them killers that they letting out, they right there in that building. But it's better, just because we black, we get along with the killers or something? We get along with the rapists because we black and we from the same hood? What is that? We need protection too.
In his music, Tupac seemed to glorify what he called thug life. But what he really wanted was a life lived in peace. And that's really what the problem is. In high-crime areas, there isn't any peace. People don't feel safe. What it looks like the Minneapolis City Council finally learned is that people feel much safer with a big police presence in those communities. Because while there are numerous instances of police officers who abuse their power or who are negligent, the vast majority of law-abiding citizens, regardless of race, would feel safer dealing with the police than the scum scouring the sidewalks of their dangerous neighborhood. It's about time that they've wisened up and refunded the police. But I hope they start to see that the bigger problem is the activism. I doubt they will, though, because the unrest they were able to gin up last year achieved their stated goal. It helped get Trump out of office.
Well, hands down, Trump not only needs to not be in office in November, but he should resign now. Trump needs to be out of office. He is not fit for office. And so what we are going to push for is a move to get Trump out, while we're also going to continue to push and pressure Vice President Joe Biden around his policies and relationship to policing and criminalization. That's going to be important. But our goal is to get Trump out.
That was one of the BLM founders basically admitting that the 2020 summer of protest was about Trump, even though the former president had nothing to do with how cities like Minneapolis are policing their citizens. And as the recent Time article titled "The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election" clearly pointed out, the progressive masses were waiting for the signal to march in the streets on election night. They were coordinated, and they were ready to go. But it turned out to be a better political decision to not take to the streets, so they were told to stand down. If you can remember correctly, everyone who saw the original video of George Floyd with the cop's knee on his neck agreed that what they were seeing was wrong, but the masses still took to the streets. Why? Because it was never about what happened to Floyd, just like calls for defunding the police are not about making communities safer. And I sure hope this is a sign in Minneapolis that the people on the left are starting to wisen up. I highly doubt it, though. I'm afraid that for Democrat leaders, politics are more important than people. And that's the simple truth. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to our channel, and if you want to become a supporting member of Blue Collar Logic, click on the link in the description and give what you can.